Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Pamela Deason, the Marketing Manager for Layer7 API Security. And we have here with us today two guest speakers representing Volkswagen. We have Sunjita and Ildar. They will be going through a presentation with you. I do want to remind you that you are hard muted during the presentation, but you can still in the panel type in your questions should you have any during the presentation. We will be monitoring those. After the presentation, I will unmute everyone and then you can ask your questions verbally directly of the representatives that we have here. And also, I do want to remind everyone just a quick little marketing update. There's a newsletter that's coming out in just a few weeks. We have a new combined API Layer 7 security with DevOps newsletter that will be going out. And there's quite a few updates for this year. I'm not going to go through them all here, but you can see them in the newsletter. If for some reason you haven't yet registered for the newsletter, please take a minute and do that. I'm actually sending the link to do that in the chat out to everyone so that you can do that if you're interested. And that's it for me for now. So I'm going to turn it over to Sunjita. Sunjita has joined us and going to start our presentation today.
Yes, thank you very much, Pamela. So I'll take over. I hope you already see my screen and hear me clearly. So welcome everyone. Welcome again. Did you drive your electric car today? Maybe you checked your battery charging status, unlocked the car remotely, enjoyed the seamless infotainment system on the go. Ever wondered how all these smart features come together so effortlessly? Behind the scene is not magic, it's the cutting edge technology. Today, we will take you on a journey through the engine room of the connected mobility, the API gateway that powers this experience for millions of cars of Volkswagen Group. So, I'm Sanjida Afrin, product owner of our API gateway in Connect and Cloud platform. Also, I have my colleague Ildar with me, the solution architect of our gateway. Today, we will deep dive inside the API gateway of the largest connected car device backend of Volkswagen Group. Here's what we are going to cover today. First, we will introduce you to our API gateway in Connect and Cloud platform. Next, we will dive into the measures we have implemented to ensure resilience and stability at scale, including our circuit breaker approach to protect against overload situation. We will also talk about Open Telemetry feature, our end-to-end monitoring solution that really simplifies debugging and enhance the visibility. Finally, we will discuss a little bit about policy as code feature that brings efficiency and consistency to our operations and deployments. So before we dive deeper into details, let's start with what connected car backend and automotive cloud really are. So the connected car backend is a digital infrastructure that enables vehicles to communicate with cloud services and other devices, powering features like remote control, real-time updates, advanced infotainment system. Our API gateway is a central infrastructure component and entry point for the whole connected car backend system landscape. So the underlying technology of our gateway is Broadcom. Now, what does the gateway do? It exposes backend API to internet. It brings security, authorization, authentication. It has some business logic as well, like payload validation, transformation of payload. We have rate limiting and quota features as well. Let's have a look into the scope of our mobile service gateway. We are covering all the iconic brands like Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini. Basically, we are actually providing our service to all the brands of Volkswagen groups. If I look into our infrastructure, it's also very interesting and very diverse. We have our cloud infrastructure. We have it on AWS, Microsoft Azure as well. We also have on-premise data center. If I look into the regional scope, it's very global. We are covering Central Europe, North America. We have a separate installation in China. We are also covering the rest of the Asia. Here is a very brief overview about the resilience and stability measures that we have taken over the years. We are not going to talk about all the measures in detail. Rather, we will focus into very important measure that really made an impact on our resilience. So circuit breaker, I would like to mention, it's really important to protect our gateway against overload situation. Then we have rate limiting that really protect our gateway for a huge amount of third-party requests. Would like to mention canary rollout. It is another important feature for seamless deployment. We also did some timeout and retake configuration. The goal was to avoid the impact due to the backend issues. With that, I will hand over to my colleague Inder, who will talk about the measures in detail. Inder, up to you.
Thank you very much, Sanjida. Let me continue the presentation. So as you have heard from Sanjida, so one of our resilience measure is circuit breaker. Yeah? And this measure actually the major benefit of this is to reduce the impact of slow backends or even not responding backends. Yeah? It actually protects not only gateway itself, it also protects backends from overloading. To handle backends slow responses or even unavailability, we introduce the threshold for each backend. Example, if a backend has a slow response during some period of time, we stop forwarding to this backend, for example, for the next 30 seconds. So the key challenges was to agree the threshold with individual backend team and also agree on possible errors as a result of breaking the circuit. As for timeline, you can see that our first rollout was almost 1 year ago, and yeah, the also further rollouts phases were also done in the last year. Sanjida, please, the next slide.
Yeah.
Here you can see how the circuit breaker works. So the upper part is a case when circuit breaker is not broken. Yeah, it means that the request is forwarded to the backend. But in the case below, the circuit breaker is broken. It means the request is not forwarded to backend. Yeah. So this way we can protect both backend and ourselves from the long response times and also overloading of our resources. The next slide, please. Another feature that I would like to present here is OpenTelemetry. So Layer7 has released this OpenTelemetry functionality as a preview feature. Yeah? And OTL provides distributed tracing, also metrics and log collection capabilities for the Layer 7 API gateway. As you can see from the technical details, there are two features in place. First of all, W3C trace context propagation, and also itself OpenTelemetry instrumentation. So one of the key challenge was to organize or to install OpenTelemetry collector in our infrastructure, cloud infrastructure. And also we have to put custom values into the traces. Since the statistics or the traces are gathered not only from the gateway, so they must be or might be able to also to filter out. As for rollout, you can see that I would say in the second part of the last year, we started with our rollout with I would say a few services, but now we're expanding it to other services. In the next slide, we can see how the our configuration was done. So here you can see how it's actually works and how the OTL is can be presented. So you can see here that the request or the traces are sent out from API gateway, and then, for example, in Grafana, you can visualize your traces. And yeah, as I said, in the next slide, let us see our configuration, where I can give you more details. So our requirements was, for example, first of all, no metrics in our initial phase. So as you can see, the second slide in the cluster-wide properties, we have disabled the metrics. And also, we wanted to have OTL traces only for our two gateway services. Yeah. So as you can see in the property OTL.traceConfig, these two services were whitelisted. And then we also needed to provide some custom information from our requests. And this information was gathered and collected into the variable, context variable service.osrr. And the next requirement was actually also to have only one trace per request. So per default, the functionality of API gateway, Layer 7 API gateway, provides or generates the traces for each assertion. So this way you can, for example, look in the Grafana how long each assertion takes in a time period. Yeah. But for us, it was not needed. That's why we have this excluded configuration. It means that only one span was generated and sent to the collector. The next slide, please, Sunjina. And yeah, the next feature that I would like to talk about is policy as code. Yeah, so this feature allows you to manage your policies using code for efficient management independent of gateway deployments. So this approach simplifies policy authoring and modification processes, enhancing offline policy creation while ensuring continuous gateway connectivity. Yeah. So this policy can, so any policy can be then exported and stored in several formats like JSON, YAML, or code formats. And yeah, of course, the code format is more interesting for us because it's give you a more readable option for your policies. And for import and export, yeah, you need to use Grafana. And yeah, as I said, the most interesting format is code, and we have chosen this one for our repositories. Yeah, our challenge is actually the number of gateway services. We have hundreds of them. That's why this import can take time, but export was very quick, I would say, in a seconds, maybe 1 second. And of course, as soon as we will be finished with our POC proof of concept, then of course we will change our development pipeline and deployment so that we can smoothly put our code to repository and then automatically to the gateway on the corresponding environment, be it test, pre-live, or even live environment. I think that was the last slide, right? Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Ilder. So with that, we would like to finish our presentation and we are open for your questions. So feel free to ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Ildar and Sanjita. Thank you very much. So I am going to unmute everyone so that you can yourself, take yourself off of mute and ask any questions that you might have. Okay, you should be able to come off mute now if you do have questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Or if you'd prefer to type them, you can do that as well.
Hello.
Hello, does someone want to ask a question?
Yes. What we see, like when we export the service from, let's say, the database, or because we're still backed up by the database, or we export the service from policy manager, the attributes are not same as what we have coded or what we have created the the service with. Let's say we create a service with a route assertion. When we export it, it has all these other attributes which does not make sense. So with the new feature which is coming up, like are we able to I mean, is it going to be like more clear to us when we export the service, and or is it going to be like same those vague attributes which we see currently in XML?
So you just want to have some kind of comparison between the policy in XML format and also in other format, right?
Right. I mean, currently when we export it from like this XML attributes, they do not make sense. They look like different than what we are expecting on the gateway. Like when we create service, it's a lot different than when you export it in XML.
I can help with that, Ildar, if you like.
Yes, please, because I think it's not really relevant from.
Yeah, hey, Andy, how you doing?
Yeah.
So I think what you're referring to is how will policy as code improve your interpretation of the policy that gets exported using
Yes,
Graph. Yeah, so with policy as code, you won't only be able to export it as an escaped XML string. You will also be able to export it as either a JSON string or a YAML string, or really better yet, really the ultimate goal of policy as code. You'll be able to export your policy as a JSON object embedded in the JSON of the API definition you export using GraphMan, which makes it much easier to read, much easier to work with programmatically. And then as part of that policy as code feature, not only do you get what I just described, but we also intend to document the JSON schema of every assertion that we support. So you'll get better documentation of the properties and values of that JSON object outside of Policy Manager. It is a preview feature. We focused on supporting a handful of assertions out of the gate, primarily focused on the use case of customers using it to publish new services or services that are built on top of a framework that uses included fragments or encapsulated assertions to build policies. But with our new PM2 initiative, the initiative to create a replacement UI for Policy Manager, for which we have to go through every single assertion, to support them in the new UI. For every assertion, we're going to close the gap for policy as code. So it's a important initiative. We're fast tracking it. Policy as code's part of that. So before long, we'll support policy as code for every assertion.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers my question. The one more challenge with what we see is like the encapsulated and policy fragments. We don't see that in the service code, and we need to handle that outside of the as a different use case. So would this new one would I mean, is it gonna include the encapsulated custom policy fragments and all that?
It'll support those, but just like today, those are references from your service policy to a policy fragment or an encapsulated assertion. That's not going to remain unchanged. So if you're asking about exporting a service and all of its dependencies so that you're making sure the policy fragments and encapsulated assertions that it references come with it, that's a problem that you would solve in another way. That's a problem that can be easily solved with GraphMan or even RESTman when you export something with dependencies. Is that what your question was referring to?
Yeah, that was my question. Thanks.
Yeah. Good questions.
Hello.
Anybody else have questions for Ildar and Sanjita?
I have a related question about the formatting actually. My name is Mesut Yalçın from Maxis. The question is if the code format is working with GraphMan CLI also with some combine or explode, implode commands. I don't remember
Yes.
exactly, but
It's working, yes.
yes, okay, thank you. I have one more quick question. The entities, unsupported entities by GraphMan, I can ask to Broadcom or Ildar, maybe you have some. I know an example, the solution kits migration of the export and import of the solution kits not supported by GraphMan, but I also wonder if this is still valid and are there any other objects that are not supported with the GraphMan yet?
Yes, there is still a gap between GraphMan and RESTman. Going in both directions, frankly. GraphMan's already more capable and supports objects. RESTman doesn't in other ways. But yes, GraphMan does not support solution kits yet. But just like we're going to close the gap on policy as code as we continue to work on the Policy Manager replacement UI, we'll close some of those other entity management gaps using GraphMan 2, because GraphMan is going to be the primary API that the new web-based UI uses to communicate with and configure the gateway. And we do not plan at this point to remove the ability to manage solution kits through the UI, so GraphMan will also have to manage solution kits.
Okay, thank you. I ask because if we build a tool with GraphMan for migration purposes right now, I just wanted to make sure the objects, the entity is not supported with the GraphMan yet. And for now, I understand that the solution kits support or are also on the way. It will be supported in the future. Okay.
Yes, that's right. So in general, we document what we do support, not what we don't support. So if you don't see something in the list of supported entities, it's not supported. But yes, there is roadmap to close most or all of that gap as makes sense. And again, in some ways, GraphMan can already export even more than RESTman could, and is otherwise more capable. But you do have to kind of look at the two together based on your use case and some customers might continue to use both, even while a lot of customers are rolling over to Grafman.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions for Sanjita and Ildar? I guess Sanjita and Ildar, you did talk about some features that you have been using that have been GA for a while, but that we've created enhancements for, namely the circuit breaker assertion, some preview features like open telemetry and policy as code. Did you want to talk about some of the enhancement requests that you asked for that we're delivering, and kind of explain why those were important to you, and where you plan to go next with them?
Yes, I think I can highlight this. Yeah, so in the next release, we expecting to have an ability to put customized attributes into the traces as a trace attributes. Yeah, so we can put them and fill them with our values, so we can even create or have our names as a property, and of course then our value. So this is really also will be very helpful to analyze then the traces when you have millions of requests. Of course, some additional information needed to filter out or to analyze or to make some analytics. Yeah, this is all really expected. Yeah.
Exactly. It will reduce our debugging times, and especially for our end customer, which are the brands, they will have better understanding about an incident when it is happening.
Yep. Thank you. And remind me, I'm not sure if it was your team or the other team that was looking at the distributed circuit breaker assertion and had enhancements related to that too. But that's something we're also working on. I know you're using a distributed shared state provider in some of your environments to share state across gateways. I don't know if you're prepared to talk a little bit about that and where you want to take that next, but I know that's of general interest to many customers.
Yeah, it's true. Ben, we are actually started looking into it as a POC. Ildar, if you have further information, you can add. But as you mentioned, distributed circuit breaker was also another interest for us as well.
Yes, we have started the POC. Yeah, I think we have some limitations with Redis, but I think we still need to continue working on this, because I think it's not yet finished.
Yeah, exactly. It is not finalized yet.
Yeah. So for the other folks on the line, that would be sort of an extension of what they've already been doing with the out-of-the-box circuit breaker assertion like they presented, which has been really effective to them. But the primary limitation of that, as perhaps some of you know, is it works in memory on the gateway. So it does not share the circuit breaker state across multiple gateways in a cluster or across unclustered gateways, depending on how you deploy them. What Audi, Volkswagen is currently doing a POC of is the new distributed circuit breaker assertion that can distribute that circuit breaker state using external distributed shared state providers like Hazelcast or Redis. And so they're doing a POC on that right now. Any other questions for Sanjita or Ildar, folks, or in general? So I'm looking in chat. I don't see any in chat.
Yeah, I don't think there's any questions that have come in through the panel, Ben.
Okay.
But yeah, any topics you guys, anyone wants to bring up, now's the time to bring it up, or if you have questions in general.
So policy as a code is something we need to request as a from the support ticket, or is it available in certain gateway version?
It's available as preview out of the box in later gateway releases. As such, you would have to upgrade to one of those later gateway releases to preview it. Everybody can preview it then as they like, but by definition, preview features are meant for previewing a feature in a non-production environment without Broadcom support. So you wouldn't open support cases for them and get supported by Broadcom. But also, in most cases, for preview features, we are ready to offer Broadcom support to a short list of customers that ask for it. If they want to use that preview feature in the production environment. And so to your question, the process is to open a support case saying, yes, you would like to use this, and you would like us to approve Broadcom support for it. And then if your use cases and its capabilities and your and our expectations of our ability to support it all line up, then we would add you to that list and you could start using it and open support cases for it. Again, policy as code is preview. It focused on a handful of assertions that are fully supported. So those are covered under the policy as code documentation. If you do start to preview it, it'll appear like it, well, and it generally does, export all of your policy in all of those different supported formats. What it's not completely capable of yet is reliably importing all of your policy in all of those different supported formats. There's a handful of assertions that would likely run into problems on import. So again, with that policy manager replacement project that we've begun and we're accelerating, we're going to close the gap on policy as code for all assertions, and that'll mean engineering if it's necessary, but otherwise testing and documentation for a growing list of assertions that will support policy as code.
Okay. So then, like, we could request it for later gateway version as well, like 11.1.
We won't backport it, but it will continue to be available as preview in the gateway version it was released in and all following gateway versions. And at some point, based on user feedback and demand, it'll go from preview to GA.
Okay.
And then everybody can use it and get full support for it because it's a GA feature in the Pro.
Okay, so only for the preview, we just gotta be on the latest version of that.
Later
preview.
version. I can look to see what version we introduced it in it. I don't remember off the top of my head. If you give me a second, I can tell you that. I'm thinking it was 11.1.1 as preview, but let me look. Uh, 11.1 GA was when we introduced it as preview. So it's in 11.1 and 11.1.1.
Okay, thanks. Can you give the because we use the Kubernetes cloud to it? Can you give the what month is that version came out in 11.1?
Yeah, 11.1 came out in, let me just take a quick look.
Like Docker version.
May 2nd of 2024.
Okay.
It should be tagged as 11.1 as well.
In the Docker version? Yeah, let me check.
That's right.
Thanks.
Yep. Other questions for any of us? Okay, maybe we can.
Okay. Yeah, just to let everyone know, the recording will be available. I typically also put it on YouTube, so it will be out there so you guys can reference it if you'd like. And of course, we're going to have our next office hours, and we already have our topic there. So it's AI Gateway, and stay tuned for that, right? So on the landing page, there is a registration link that's already open for our February office hours with the topic there. So feel free to go to the landing page and go ahead and register for next month. And it's been a great turnout and a great presentation, Ildar and Sujita, for this month. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan, for helping out.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
great.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.